kind of. Ross Dellinger just tweeted this, Craig, about an hour ago. At a board meeting today, Pac-12 presented presidents with an update on what's termed accelerated progress on a TV deal. Only a framework was revealed with significant linear concepts, a more substantive framework expected by Football Media Days on July 21st, which God help them if they don't get that done by them. And Pac-12 leadership reiterated that any expansion decision will be made after a deal has been agreed to, and this puts San Diego State in a bind as Aztecs must give Mountain West formal notice of withdrawal by today to avoid a doubling of the $17 million exit fee for 2024. The news from the Pac-12 board meeting, or more like non-news, signals that San Diego State is likely at some point soon to reaffirm its position with the Mountain West that its original letter to the conference was not, in fact, a formal withdrawal.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously big news for people who follow realignment. Been kind of circling this weekend for some news one way or the other, because that's just kind of where the tea leaves were, pointing, and kind of just with the way things have gone, that was just sort of that loose timeline again, right? We've had a few of those, so chalk this up as another one that just meant absolutely nothing in the end. And the next time I hear a timeline, I'm just not going to believe it, because what's the point? Like, barring it not being before the end of next football season, I don't think timelines mean anything anymore, because they've just shot through each one that was supposed to, have been something or been a date to figure out something. Now, if you want to look at them in the, the frame of, okay, well, this is just needing to know certain information by these certain dates. Okay, that's one thing. I don't really care so much about that, because I think I'm like everybody else. I want to know what the actual deal is. The discussions leading up to, if there's some drama, like the San Diego State thing, okay, that's of interest. But they're hashing out the linear. I don't, like that. That to me is another conversation, I guess, for people to have, but not one that I'm totally interested in at this point. I'm interested in just what it actually looks like, and no more of the, wondering and speculating. But there will be more of that, because there is no deal. So it's just going to leave at least, 2 or 3 more weeks, and probably more than that, given the way things have gone so far, for even more speculation. So if you have fun with that, then there's going to be more fun to be had. And I think it's unfortunate if you're a Pac-12 fan that was hoping to figure out something by today and just kind of be able to see, get out of my mentions. We've got something. Leave me alone. As a Pac-12 fan, you've had these Big 12 folks and just everybody in general kind of talking about your conference, and it would be nice to say, okay, we've got one. We know what's going on, but now you have to wait. For Big 12 fans who have been waiting to hopefully poach, you got to wait some more. So, that's a bummer, man. I didn't think 100% something's for sure coming, but I was hoping that there would be something before July 4th, and maybe they would release something over the weekend. That'd be the dumbest thing possible. I don't think they're that dumb. So that leads you to believe that, yeah, in fact, based on what Ross had to say, that there's going to be more of a waiting game. The San Diego State part is interesting to me, though, because the way that I read the whole interaction the other day was because they said, well, no, that's not a formal letter of withdrawal, and the conference was like, yes, it was. I was led to believe that, wouldn't that mean that you accepted their formal letter of resignation and therefore they got it in under the deadline? So I don't understand where this whole, well, now they've got the double the payment because it's going to be 34 rather than 17 because they didn't state that they were, do you see what I'm saying there? And I guess maybe they had to state they were going and have an official landing spot. Maybe that's the caveat, because technically they did state that they were leaving because you accepted it that way. So that means to me that you're only paying the half amount because you got it under the deadline. But again, maybe they're looking at it from you have a destination, you're officially entering that destination, and that's what would kick it in. So I'm a little confused on that part, but yeah, man, tough position for San Diego State to be in potentially, and just more of a waiting game for everyone who's been already waiting for quite a while.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't, I agree with you on that. It's kind of confusing, but again, if San Diego State thought that there was a chance, which also the communication of this from the Pac-12 with the people they could be potentially doing business with feels terrible to me, in that, San Diego State goes out and sends this letter with the hope that something can get done by July 1st, only to find out on June 30th that we hope to have a framework by July 21st before our media days, and kicking the can down the road another 3 weeks,
right,
which is what they've been really good at doing, is kicking the can down the road. Whether this gets done or not, oh, there's significant linear concepts. Well, what's a concept, Craig?
It's something that's not actually come to fruition. It's an idea that may or may not actually happen.
Yeah. So there's all these words that keep popping up with the Pac-12 that are all ideas, but they're not done. And that's the thing with the Pac-12 that needs to get done. And here, San Diego State is, thinking that, and look, I get from their perspective, you have to, throw the line out in the water right then, thinking that, okay, if this is going to happen this year, we've got to be ready. And then not, because if the TV deal doesn't get it done until July 21st, and, it's not like you can go back to the Pac-12 and be like, look, I understand that, you guys had some things, but can you kick in for the $17 million that you guys don't have because you've got to deal with some other stuff too? That's not going to happen for them either. So, yeah, it's just, this continues to be all in all, and it's just a mess for the Pac-12. It's a mess, and if they get it worked out, great, but I hope they look back immediately after it's over and go, we took the longest possible road to this.
Yeah, I think there's still, and there will remain until there's, finality, there will remain the idea of like, okay, well, maybe they pull something out, or maybe they're working on something, right? Like in Ross's tweet, he talks about these, how did he phrase it, with the linear concepts? An accelerated progress on a TV deal, so to suggest that they're really ramping this bad boy up, which was kind of the thought, which is why people thought it would be done in part, not only the exit fee for San Diego State, but just the fact that, like, hey, they've got to be kind of getting close here, but only a general framework revealed. Like, that to me is like, so you're not even filling in the blanks just yet in a lot of ways. Significant linear concepts, a more substantive framework expected by media days on July 21st, like you said, but that's just more framework. That's not even still talking about the actual deal. So again, like with these deadlines, I guess they, part of it is just like assuming that something should have to happen by a certain point, and that just kind of goes everywhere. Or there's actual dates like the San Diego State that's like, well, you'd think they'd want to know and kind of need to know by a date, but I guess that doesn't matter as much as we think maybe it does, or it doesn't necessarily deter them from still completing something down the road, just not in the way that you thought they were going to. But yeah, it would feel like at this point, no matter who you are, that so many people have talked over such a long time now. And I'm not talking about like us, I'm talking about the actual presidents, and, just they're aware and have made known to every interviewer they've talked to about this subject that they're aware of what the talk is and the perception is, and the desires of the schools are, and all that type of stuff. But I mean, at a certain point when all y'all are saying like it's coming, and now we're like 6 months past when that was said at one point, and then there's this stretch where it's like, well, by media days, it's just like, damn, like are they gonna show up to media days and be like, well, we don't have the actual deal, but we've got like half of it. It's just, yeah, it would be maddening to me. Like, it's from my chair that I'm sitting in right now as a college football fan and a realignment fan, to the point now where I have been saying this for a little bit now. I'm getting very fatigued by it, like I think a lot of people are, because the Pac-12 might have actually done the most brilliant thing in dragging this out so long that they've made people stop caring about it, so they're not under the microscope. Like, maybe they're so genius that they had this reverse psychology of, we'll just never sign a deal, and we'll wait you out, and then you'll just get fed up and move on to something else and leave us alone. So if that was the goal, then mission accomplished, I think, for some people. But, yeah, I just assume that people have to be, for those who it matters to, like the people who are going to be affected by it, I would have to think that you're scratching your head a little bit at this point, man. I mean, you have to be. It's
I'll give
July.
I'll give you a deadline in my mind. They have the one that Ross put out there, July 21st, media days. That's 22 days from right now. That's
I know,
3
but
weeks
it
from
was
right now.
3 weeks ago, and it was a month before that.
But they can't hide anymore.
Right, Kleofkoff has to talk there. Yeah.
Kleofkoff has to talk there, and if he doesn't, that's terrible. That is awful. That would be in Pac-12 terms like, okay, the president is going to address everybody from the Rose Garden tonight about what's going on, and then you go to the cameras like, he got tied up. He's not going to talk about it because he doesn't know. And so if the 21st they don't have a TV deal and he can't talk about it, then that's going to be really bad. And that, to me, would be where it really starts to mirror what happened with not a mirror would be a little bit of a different thing, because this has maybe been a little bit more out in the open. But media days happen. There's not the answer. You get past the wave of everybody there asking you questions, and then the big news comes out, like it did with the SEC and Texas and OU, although that happened at SEC media days or right thereafter around it. Before with Brett Zwerneman finding that out. And again, if one of the schools in that deal hadn't been so vehemently against it and angry about it, maybe no one would have known, until Texas know you wanted them to.
That's one of my, you could probably write an entire series, on the various what-ifs of college football. I mean, you definitely could write a series on the various what-ifs of college football, but that would be one. Like, what if Brett Zwerneman doesn't pop that story out? I've said that on this show before a couple times, but I really do wonder, what would have happened there? Would we all have just woken up one day a few weeks later and just the biggest surprise ever, OU and Texas are going? I mean, because it still was. It was still basically that. It's just that they didn't get the whole sizzle with it. They got some reporter from College Station breaking it via a newspaper and Twitter, so it didn't have the big boom to it, from like an orchestrated standpoint, like they could have probably pulled off had he not leaked that. So yeah, that was obviously intentional to take some of the steam out of that, but it was still a major, major deal. So yeah, I mean, I think for people like us who are just following along or some, times know a thing or two about a thing or two, it is, a long saga that's been going on. And like I said, I know a lot of people are fatigued by it, but, it's still interesting. And it's just kind of crazy that we're still here. And now it's almost July and will be July by the end of the weekend. And this is still basically where it always was from even a year ago. I mean, it's really not all that different. There's framework a year later, Paul.
Yeah.
Framework. And that's after all of the various networks have been talked about. And, today, as I'm sure we'll get to, ESPN laid off like 1 billion people again.
Yeah.
So they can continue paying their high-priced people and just, kind of, I guess they're going to have mostly like an upper tier and then just kind of a drop and then a kind of a mid-tier. And then I don't know if a lot of the surrounding supporting cast at ESPN is going to be as deep as it's ever been.
It's going to look like America.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. That's basically goes because they got to make money. They're not making enough money out of the billions they're making. They've got to make more, so they got to fire people to make more because Lord knows the people at the top aren't taking a pay cut, I'm sure. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that's going on. And so when you think about the ESPN aspect to this, there's that element of it. So, like, what kind of money are we talking? Because they've been rumored about, but like every network's been rumored about, and it's
well, and some of this money is also that their layoffs are going to make sure they have the money on the front end to like renew the NBA deal and all these other things that are coming. See that the
NBA deal is going to be expensive for whoever gets that.
The Pac-12 has these problems negotiating with networks as well because you've got a whale coming in the water. That.
And shoot, they've been rumored to be. I don't think there's probably much to it. But maybe there is. I don't know, because clearly they're not going to have a lot of personality-driven programming unless it's just going to be Stephen A. and McAfee and like 2 other people on every single show, which is
Greenberg and
it's going to be this, that whole deal. But there's been rumors about maybe them getting into business with WWE further. I don't know how that would work because that's still just I don't like that marriage. Like, it's still sports and it's sports entertainment or whatever. So that is a hot brand right now, though, and they've been linked to that, and they're going to be linked to like every sports property, but particularly the NBA. And then, if they wanted to dip into something else like WWE for a night a week or something, then that's more money. So where's all that coming from at a time when there's not a lot of it going around? That part of it's been interesting as well. So I'm still fascinated to learn who they end up working with, if it's an Apple thing, if it's an Ion, ESPN, whatever it is thing. And would love to know what the framework is, but I'd be awfully disappointed to just have framework after all this time and not have something more substantial to head into the weekend, pop some fireworks, and feel like if I'm a Pac-12 person, like, yes, this is what we're looking forward to, and instead it's like, oh no, another pushback of a pretend deadline or whatever.
And look, part of ESPN, like, I can get into a real complex talk about our business and how it's changed. Like, the fact that you and I are sitting here on YouTube we have 30,000 plus subscribers on this channel. That's 30,000 people that could be, or it's maybe even more because a lot of the people who watch will never subscribe. But let's just talk for the sake of simplicity in this discussion is where it comes to ESPN and media rights. We're just one entity that has 30,000 eyeballs that could, even if it's 20 minutes a day, not be watching ESPN because they like us as opposed to the personalities that are there. And now throw that in the water with all the rest of sports YouTube. ESPN is also competing with that.
Right.
And so that's new stuff they have. So when you're talking about...
Well, they're also killing off sports radio, basically.
Exactly.
Their own national radio brand is basically just going in the gutter because they haven't kept its... a well-oiled machine. They've neglected it, quite frankly, and they've made it very clear that they're just ESPN Radio the way that we've always known it. Like, those glory days are way dead. Like, I mean, they're not even trying to hide it. Yeah.
So now, because of the way that all of that is consumed, they have to go back to something that only they can do. So their personality and like talk-driven stuff, which is what we do, there has a lot more even smaller, which we're not competition for ESPN. They're like in no way afraid of us, but they're afraid of us and everyone like us together. Like, we are one very small part of a big army that has taken away potential viewers and sponsorship dollars and all those things that ESPN has. What I think they should do is lean back into what made them great, because part of the problem I think they've had is they're not programming to the right group of people. They're programming to the people who are on Twitter all day long, which no matter what you think of how many people are on Twitter, which is still a crap load of people, it's still not the majority of people who are watching sports. If you just went back to some old school highlights and sports centers and even like lower tier live sports, I bet you would save that money and your viewership would go back up, because you can do things by showing highlights that we can't do because you have the rights to that video. And they don't really do that much anymore. Watch SportsCenter and you have to pray for the highlights to come up. Pray for them. Like, I hope I'm turning it on when I can watch the baseball highlights, as opposed to all the other stuff they have, thrown in the middle of it. And so that's my opinion, but, I'm not in charge of ESPN. I'd like to think they'd be making more money if I was, but, I'm not that smart. So
yeah, we're also not the TikTok generation, so
no.
Maybe what we think is already outdated in some ways. But yeah, I think you're probably onto something there. Turning it back to kind of what we were talking about, though, like, they're obviously going a different direction. So how involved are they going to be in spending money, and how involved might they be with the Pac-12 or whoever it's going to be? We still don't know that for sure. Every network's been rumored or shot down at various points in this whole saga. Every dollar figure's been rumored or shot down at various points in this saga. Every date's been blown through. Every meeting's turned into nothing, basically. And every president that said something has, said something to either add fuel to the fire or calm the waters or whatever. But yeah, like I said a few minutes ago, I would imagine that no matter who you are, even if you're the most optimistic person, and I take that back. I know there are people that are just going to refuse to believe anything but positives. But yeah, I wouldn't be happy sitting here on June 30th, heading into July 4th weekend and kicking the can down the road again, publicly at least. Now, it might be a different story behind the scenes. I'm sure that'll be the storyline that's put out there. Like, no, everybody's cool, everybody's great. But I don't know. If it was me, I'd be squirming a little bit, just because this has, just turned into the never-ending story, basically. And and their media days are 3 weeks away. So this is the last deadline that I'm ever going to pay attention to in this story. If they don't have something by media days, I don't want to hear the word deadline ever again unless it's involving something completely different. Can we agree on that? Because there's been about 5 of them. So, yeah, 3 weeks away, Pac-12 media days. S or get off the pot, basically, I think is probably how a lot of people feel about that. But, you say that and you're still going to be interested whenever that deal does drop, but just maybe not as interested as you once were when you felt like something was on the horizon, and now you're pushing it back once again.
All right, so I don't